This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
The NBA may be on its all-star break, but we have still got a fun weekend of sports coming up because we have a full slate in the English Premier League and some UFC coming up on Saturday as well. We're going to break down both those with the Austan and Austan show. Austan Kas talking EPL, Austan Swaim talking UFC later on. Going to be a blast to get you ready for what should be a good Saturday of sports. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here first by Austan Kas. Check him out on Twitter at Austan Kas. You can find his work over at numberFire.com, doing a lot of soccer stuff over there, a lot of NBA stuff as well. Austan, happy Friday to you. How you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm delightful. I am trying to figure out this whole soccer thing, so I am leaning on you, having you educate me here. We talked 2 weeks ago about the top of the table, Liverpool, Man City, and then Man City got the win back on Wednesday, I think it was, over. Good call by you. Oh, Arsenal. Dang it. Yeah. They were talking about Liverpool later on. See, I told you I'm still trying to figure it out. Over Arsenal on Wednesday. So good call by you. Can we depend on that level of accuracy every time going forward?
Hey, I hope so.
Well, we'll see if we can duplicate that by talking about the other side of the table later on today, talking about some relegation futures and much more. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Our Daytona 500 preview is already up with Dr. Nick Giffen breaking down his favorite bets for Daytona, his modeling process, and much more. Find that on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and on the FanDuel YouTube page if you want to consume that version instead. Or check us out and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. In Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Now, as mentioned, Austan, we talked about the good side of the table last time. Let's talk about the bad side here and talk about the relegation futures over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, we've got Bournemouth and Southampton as being kind of like favored to be relegated, but some other potential spots you could turn to if you're looking for some value in the relegation market. So, Austan, when you look at this market right now, this futures market, are you seeing any value to be relegated?
Yeah, so like you said, it's basically priced as a 5-team race. I don't know if that's the term you want to use, but yeah, it looks like, the way FanDuel Sportsbook has it, Bournemouth and Southampton are heavy favorites to go down. And then it's Everton, Leeds, and Nottingham Forest who look like they'll be duking it out for that last relegation spot. I really like Forest at plus 230. So it's not necessarily that I'm super down on Nottingham Forest. It's more that Southampton and Leeds, two of the teams below them in the table, have been really unlucky this year. According to FB Ref's expected goal model, Leeds are actually 11th in expected goal differential and Southampton are 14th. Mm-hmm. So in the current table, there's 5 teams within 5 points of each other at the bottom. So if Leeds or Southampton could just string together 2 or 3 wins, or just 2 wins and a draw, or just a couple positive results, they can hop out of the bottom 3 pretty quickly. And if either of them do that, it would obviously result in somebody else dropping down. And so West Ham and Wolves are currently in 15th and 16th, and I don't think they're in serious danger really. And by the pricing at FanDuel Sportsbook, they don't either. So that kind of leaves Forest for me. They're currently 8 points clear, and I think they could easily get sucked back down to the bottom 3. They're 16th by expected goal differential. They've scored just 17 times through 22 matches and conceded 37 goals. So they're a little lucky to be in 14th. They're kind of the opposite of Leeds and Southampton, but obviously the points that they've already amassed, even if it was through some good fortune, those are already in the bank. But they have a pretty rough schedule coming up. They have to play all the big 6 teams plus Newcastle, who's currently in 4th. And then they have a crucial game against Everton in early March. So I like taking this 230 number now, because if they would lose that game to Everton, that number is going to disappear.
Right. And it goes back to the discussion we had with the Man City debate, where the Man City Arsenal discussion, where there was an inflection point coming up pretty soon and you wanted to get in before that. And if you with Man City, they were plus money at the time. I think they're now minus 190 to win. And this is the same thing. If you got that big match coming up that could dictate this market a lot, you want the plus 230 before we get to there, especially if you think that they are going to lose that match. And it sounds like, based on your analysis, the expected goals, you are expecting that. So you want to get ahead of that inflection point and make sure you lock that in before we get there. Let's talk some positives. Saturday, pretty big match between Liverpool and Newcastle. And looking at the markets here, Austin, it seems to be a pretty tightly contested game. So any value for you in this Saturday afternoon match?
Yeah, so I like the Newcastle side. By pretty much any metric, Newcastle have been the better team all season. Liverpool are probably the most disappointing team in the league, but they just had their best performance in a while on Monday, and they're getting healthier, which is probably why Newcastle are just slight favorites. But I'll take Newcastle. Prior to Liverpool's Monday home win, which came against Everton, one of the worst teams in the league, the Reds had lost the expected goal battle in 3 straight games and had given up at least 1.6 expected goals in 4 consecutive matches. So their struggling defense should be the perfect remedy for a Newcastle attack that's been a little off lately. Plus, this game being at Newcastle at St. James Park is a big deal. Newcastle haven't lost at home this year. They've won 5 of their past 7 home matches and drew the other 2. Liverpool have lost 4 straight away matches in all competitions and lost 6 of their 10 away matches in the league this season, including losing to Wolves and Forest, 2 sides that are fighting it out to get relegated. So I really, really like Newcastle to win, and think that they probably should be closer to like plus 110. So I'm loving them at their current number.
Yeah, that's plus 155 right now. If you had the tie included in there, is that your favorite way to bet this one? Is with that being the case, the plus 155 with the tie included, or do you want to go the minus 116 where a tie is a void?
I think either are actually very, very good bets. I think I like the minus 116, and I haven't looked at the correct score market, but I'd be really interested in Newcastle at winning 1-0 or 2-0.
Okay.
So yeah, I like both of those.
Yeah, the 1-0 correct score. It doesn't say which side. I guess you could go correct score.
The ones on the left there would be home would be Newcastle.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
right there, yeah.
plus 950. Yeah. Okay. So plus 950 for them to win 1-0. That seems like a pretty good number. 13-1 for them to win 2-0.
It's a little confounding, to be honest,
Yeah.
the market. And I think Liverpool's been a really hard team for sportsbooks this year, because they're supposed to be one of the best in the league, and they just haven't been very good.
Yeah.
But they also haven't, by expected goals, they haven't been as bad as what their results. So I think it's just this funky middle ground of, we know they're better than this. They're probably going to start playing better than this at some point. They're getting a little healthier, but
right.
all the stats keep telling you that they're actually not that good.
Right.
So it's a little weird.
And at a certain point, as the sample gets larger, you kind of want to see something. You want to see something at some point. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's Newcastle versus Liverpool. Liking potentially the Newcastle money line plus 155, minus 116 with a tie being void, or looking at the correct score market, 1-0 or 2-0, plus 950 or 13-1 if you want to go that route instead. We got a lot of other games, though, on Saturday. Sorry, matches. Again, working on it. A lot of the matches, 7 matches on Saturday, Austin. What are your favorite bets across those right now?
So I see a few things in the Brentford Crystal Palace match. I really like Brentford, who are at home, to win this match at their minus 125 money line. These teams aren't far apart in the table, but by just about any metric, Brentford have been the much better side. They have an expected goal difference of plus 3.7, which ranks 8th, and that's exactly where they are in the table. Palace have an expected goal differential of minus 11.4, and that ranks 18th, but they're actually 12th on points. So if they hadn't had some good results, I think they would be a team that could get possibly sucked into a relegation battle, but they probably have too many points in the bank already. But Palace have allowed at least 1.2 expected goals in 6 straight matches, and Brentford at home have been really, really good, 6th best home goal difference. So along with that, I also like Ivan Toney to score a goal, which is at plus 120. He's their focal point for Brentford and should get on the end of a few chances. He scored in 3 of the past 4 home matches across all competitions, and he's fantastic penalty taker. And if they get a penalty, he'll take it. He's 4 for 4 from the penalty spot this season and might be the best penalty taker in the Premier League. So that's obviously a boost if you're betting on them to score anytime. And then real quick, Brentford to win 1-0 is plus 500 and 2-0 is plus 750. And I think both of those are very appealing. So yeah, it looks like 550 and 700. Yeah, I think both of those are very appealing numbers because I just think they're the better team. They're at home and they've got a really good shot to win.
If you were betting one market, including the goal score market, because that does correlate to the other ones, what would be your preferred market for betting on Brentford versus Crystal Palace?
Probably taking the correct score, the 1-0 or 2-0.
Okay.
I'm just a little bit of a sucker for the big numbers. And yeah, so that's where I'd land.
So 1-0 again is plus 550, 2-0 is 7-1. Preference for you between those two?
I'd take 2-0.
Okay. That is 7-1 again at FanDuel Sportsbook for Brentford versus Crystal Palace. Anything else for you on Saturday, Austin, before we close up here?
No, but it should be a really fun day with 8 games going on. So it's nice to have it with kind of taking center stage with NBA done and NFL obviously done. So it's fun.
Right. Well, that's good. Austan Kas, check him out on Twitter at Austan Kas. Check out his work. If you're playing some EPL DFS, writing some stuff up for that over at numberFire.com as well. Austin, have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you once again here soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jim. You too.
Thank you, Austin. But don't despair. Just because we're down one Austin does not mean we are down all Austins, because time to bring on Austan Swaim and talk about some UFC as well. We've got a card coming up this weekend. Again, terminology all over the place here. Austan Swaim, you can find him on Twitter at ASwaim3, the host of our Heat Check podcast on the UFC side for the big pay-per-view events. Austin, happy Friday. How you doing today?
I'm good, Jim. How are you doing today? I know we're kind of filling it in, and I heard you learning as you go with the terminology. So now we get to dive in. Very different. Instead of in soccer, right, where guys aren't actually hurt and they're writhing in pain, there are guys that should be writhing in pain here in UFC that they look just fine when you watch them in the octagon on Saturday.
You said I was learning the terminology. I think learning is generous. I'm trying to learn. Can we say that instead? Trying to learn? Because I think that implies that I'm not there yet, which I think is accurate. So trying to learn, I think, is the way we'll go here.
I think we're all trying to learn, right? Just learn something new every day.
That's all we do. Okay, well, let's take a look at this UFC card for this weekend. The main event is Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. Andrade right now favored on the money line at minus 148. At least that was as of yesterday. As of right now, it is minus 134. So it looks like there's some money on Blanchfield here. Anything stand out to you in that main event, Austin?
So this main event came apart last minute. Just last week, as we sat here last for this week, Erin Blanchfield had a different opponent. Jessica Andrade, to her credit, stepping in here on short notice. So this was a very careful surgical handicap, and it kind of always has to be with Jessica Andrade. She's very hard to paint this broad brush over because of her ability, because she has been world-class dominant, 0 holes in her profile against everybody that she's faced that hasn't held a UFC title. Then when she's gotten to title pictures, knockout loss to Weili Zhang, pair of losses to Rose Namajunas, and then she was just destroyed by Valentina Shevchenko in this weight class. She ceded all 7 takedown attempts. It was ugly. She couldn't get Valentina off of her. And it really all depends here, this handicap, to me. And so I don't mind if anybody disagrees with me on this. It all depends on your evaluation of Erin Blanchfield and her ability from a very limited UFC sample thus far. But my opinion of Blanchfield is that she is a true championship contender. I'm not even falling. I feel good about my handicap that I'm not falling prisoner of the moment to her win over Molly McCann last year in Utah, because McCann is not a good grappler. When she dominated the strong, surging prospect Miranda Maverick, that's when I was in. And you look, she has a plus 3.34 striking success rate. She's added exactly 4.00 takedowns per 15 minutes on incredibly efficient 68% accuracy. And you look at that takedown efficiency, it's actually higher than Valentina Shevchenko's at 64%. So I came through. I have a 1.551 unit bet on Erin Blanchfield. The number now 110 plus 110 on FanDuel Sportsbook. I come back to this notion is that Jessica Andrade just last month in Brazil set the women's flyweight record for significant strikes landed. It was a mopping. It was an ugly fight. All of us on Twitter were begging her to stop the fight. She's only this short number of a favorite here. I think the Sportsbook is telling me something with that, and for good reason.
So the Blanchfield number has shortened because Andrade was minus 140 something yesterday, and Blanchfield now plus 110. Is there still value remaining for you at that number, or is the value dried up?
I have Blanchfield as a favorite in this fight.
Okay.
When I go through and I plug my stuff in. So at plus 110, I'm in. At plus 100, I'm in. Really, when I get to like minus 135, it's the breaking point of where I wouldn't favor Blanchfield, because Jessica Andrade does have the established level of competition compared to Blanchfield. So I very much value that, and I understand where you're coming from. But Andrade is always this white glove handicap where I can't paint this broad brush over her. I really have to much more so look at the other fighter that she's facing and what I think of them.
Okay, so Blanchfield plus 110 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook to defeat Jessica Andrade. Now, that's the money line there. We got some other fights going on Saturday as well. Any other money lines you like for Saturday, Austin?
So I'm going to give you one. And Jim, you've had these moments probably when forecasting NASCAR of when you're so far off from the betting line that it makes you feel like you're missing something, right?
Literally this week.
That is me this week that I have with Jamal Emmers. He's plus 136 on FanDuel Sportsbook. It's on the earlier prelims if you switch over to the UFC Fights tab. And the reason why, you look at the highs and lows of this sport. Last time we saw Jamal Emmers, he actually hurt a very successful prospect in Pat Sabatini. Had him hurt. He was going to finish the fight. Lunged after him on the ground, and he got his leg trapped. Sabatini caught him in a leg lock, tore his ACL in a matter of seconds, and he's been out 17 months since that moment in time. So here he is about to score the biggest win of his UFC career, ends up tearing his ACL. That is the highs and lows of his sport. But his 1-3 record in UFC is so misleading. This sport, it doesn't match people properly on ability. It's much more so about trajectory of wins and losses. I don't care that he's 1-3 because the 3 losses have come against guys with 18 combined UFC wins. They are veterans. They know what they're doing. He went the distance with Giga Chikadze, who is a ranked featherweight in this division. If he had an analytical hole or something that I thought he didn't do well, I might be more open to the newcomer Ashkabov here. But his peripheral sparkling, plus 1.29 striking success rate, better level of competition, lands over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes with 53% accuracy, and his defensive metrics are solid. And I look at Ashkabov here, he's got a 23-0 professional record, which a lot of times will drive betting lines. It's like, oh, this guy's a monster and he's beaten everybody they put in front of him. But none of those were accumulated against anyone with a UFC appearance or an opponent that had faced someone with the UFC appearance. So I have no idea how good the guys he's been fighting overseas are. I know Emmers is well-rounded. He's talented. I'm stunned he's the underdog when I've got him closer to a minus 180, 190 favorite.
Oh, wow. That's a big difference. Okay.
It's a massive difference. It makes me feel like I'm missing something.
I mean, I had the exact same thing with Todd Gilliland in NASCAR. I had him at 2.5% to win, and he was at one point 200 to 1. So I understand that. It is not a fun feeling, honestly, to be that far off. It's like, you would think that it'd be like, okay, I've got this great value, but with how powerful the market is and with how often the market is right, it makes you feel like you're losing your mind. So I 100% know what we're talking about there.
I've historically had these go in both directions, where it's an easy win for the guy I thought should have been the favorite, or he just gets demolished in seconds, and I was so clearly obviously wrong. So here's hoping.
Yeah, Emmers plus 136 against Askabov over at FanDuel Sportsbook. If you are looking for that one on your FanDuel Sportsbook app, you go to the MMA tab, and UFC Prelims is where you find that one. But that's the money lines, Austin. We have got method of victory. We've got so many props available for all these matches. So what else you liking on the card for this weekend?
So I have a pair of submission props for you. We talked about exact finishing props last time. Weird timing with that card, but I do like some of these exact finishing props because I think you can project fighter styles and what they're most comfortable with if they're in a position to win. I look at the biggest favorite on this card, Mayra Bueno Silva. She was minus 520 last week. I can't quite read what she is right now on FanDuel Sportsbook. She's the biggest favorite on the card. I cannot believe, if you look at her method of victory, she's plus 220 to win by submission, because I know her profile is a little bit odd. She's actually never landed a UFC takedown. And just for your knowledge, Jim, or anyone else's knowledge, it's a lot easier to secure a UFC submission if you're on the ground. If you're in a dominant top position on the ground, it's really hard to do that if you both are standing at distance and grab somebody's limb and just be able to submit them. It's very rare. But Mayra Bueno Silva still has 4 of her UFC wins, 5 UFC wins by submission. So her default style to win thus far in UFC, 4 out of 5 times, has been via submission. And I think this line is juiced because Lena Landsberg on the other side has never been professionally submitted. But that doesn't necessarily mean very much. It's all about the styles of who she's faced before. Landsberg actually hasn't faced a fighter that averages over a submission attempt per 15 minutes. They're not strong grapplers. Mayra Bueno Silva at 1.5 is the best one that she's faced thus far. She's projected to win this fight comfortably if you trust those who know what they're doing at odds makers and odds books. I think if she's comfortably winning the fight 2-1, 2 plus 1 to 1 on Mayra Bueno Silva to win by submission is just an absurd line. I saw this last night and I had to grab it because I figured it might have been somewhere on minus 105, minus 110, like it is in my stuff.
Yeah. Bueno Silva by submission, as you said, plus 220 versus her money line is minus 520, which is what you were alluding to before. It's basically the same she's going to win, and not likely by that method. But think about paths to victory. If we take the implied odds as being gospel, minus 520, the implied odds there, 84%. So you have an 84% piece of a pie. What percentage of the time is that going to be a submission? And it sounds like, based on what you're saying, by the way she operates and by the fact that Landsberg hasn't been tested that way, a decently large chunk of that 83% pie is going to be by submission.
Correct. So like I said, minus 105, minus 110. So about 52% of the time I would project a submission. Then about another 45% I would go decision. Now, knockout is a very different story, where Bueno Silva not only doesn't have a UFC knockout herself, Landsberg's been to a decision in 7 straight fights. She's very durable. So there's not a lot of power at women's flyweight compared to other divisions. I have a weight class piece over on numberFire to plug if you want to look at some of the different trends in different divisions. But Bueno Silva, I think it's either by submission or decision, which, Jim, if you take a look at the double chance odds, you're probably not going to get nearly the number you would be by me just taking the plunge and going inside the distance with a submission.
Right. So plus 220 on Mayra Bueno Silva to win by submission. The thoughts from all. Anything else you're seeing on this card, or good for today?
Yeah, no. So the other submission that I'm looking at here is my old friend Jim Miller. I don't know if you remember talking about Jim Miller on the very first UFC Heat Check I ever did, but Jim Miller's still at it. He's approaching 40 years old, man, and he is arguably fighting his best stretch in UFC ever. You love to see stories like this. 6-3 in his last 9 fights. This is just way too long of a number when this is exactly what Jim Miller does. If I'm going to support Jim Miller much more so than his money line, I'm looking at a submission prop because 18 of his 29 pro wins have come via submission. He averages a card best 1.8 submission attempts per 15 minutes. That's what he does. And you look at the last time Alexander Hernandez appeared in this weight class at lightweight, he ended up getting submitted by Renato Moicano. So no longer, I don't think of Hernandez. Hernandez is more of a bully boxer, quite a bit of power. But I look at that power and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's the path to failure for Jim Miller? What's going wrong that would prevent him from getting a submission? Well, Hernandez's knockdown rate, 0.88%, is not very high, so he doesn't carry a lot of power in this division, and he only lands 39% of his strikes, and he's not a submission threat himself. So I think at least Miller's going to have 15 minutes to maybe pull one out. We've seen him arm bars from the bottom. We've seen him reverse position to get a rear naked choke from top control. I like Miller's money line, but this is the way that I obviously looked out to see. I got to support this guy in this fashion when he's trying submissions at such a high volume.
Yeah, so a submission win for Jim Miller is plus 500, and the money line for Miller plus 186. And it sounds like, based on the way you view the match going down, you think that's his best route to victory is via submission?
I do. Yeah. So the plus 500 odds here are just a little bit longer than what I have implied. I've got like a 35% chance of a submission here because Hernandez, that was his only submission loss. So it's not like a plague or a massive issue that he's had in this division. I just see Jim Miller as one of the better submission guys he's faced so far, just like Moicano. And if Jim Miller has a chance in this fight, he could get knocked out in 5 seconds. I'd rather be supporting a quarter unit on a plus 500 prop than a full unit on his money line.
Right. You can acknowledge that there are paths to this not working out. For 5-1, that's typically going to be the case, but I think that makes a lot of sense. All right.
Yeah.
That is Austin's win. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you look at paths to failure in this sport, all the time I've had significant bets ruined by knee injuries, by, elbows dislocating, by shoulders popping out. And these are things that aren't exactly forecastable. So I actually enjoy this market for smaller unit darts when I have a guy like Miller that has such a tendency. And usually the underdogs are undervalued in these prop markets as well, specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to read Austin's work in written form, it is up. His betting guide is up over on numberFire.com for UFC Vegas 69. You can check that out over there. Check out Austin on Twitter at Swaim3. Check out the UFC podcast of the big events on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Austin, I appreciate the time. Good luck to you with the UFC and have a fantastic weekend.
Have a great weekend, Jim. Happy Daytona weekend. I know you'll be locked in all week.
I will be locked in tomorrow specifically. I have more bets on Xfinity than Cup, which is weird, but we're going to see how they go. Although if Gilly wins on Sunday, I'm not showing up to work on Monday because we're off anyway. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. Check out Austin on Twitter at Swaim3. I am on Twitter at Jim Saunas. Thank you once again to Austan Kas earlier on. Check him out on Twitter at Austan Kas to follow all of their work. Make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Back next week, not on Monday because we're off for the holiday, back on Tuesday, talk some Honda Classic golf with Allie McCann, getting her thoughts on the field there. We'll talk to you all then. Have a fantastic 3-day weekend. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.